¿Qué tal, señoras y señores? Soy Jorge Saldaña. Es un gran placer. Voy al grano. Me encuentro con el Premio Nobel de Física, el doctor William Phillips. Doctor, es un placer tenerlo hoy con nosotros.
And a pleasure for me as well.
Hemos visto una de las más importantes conferencias que ha traído el centenario de la universidad aquí a San Luis Potosí. Pero sabemos que no es su primera vez en este estado.
Yeah.
¿Puede platicarnos de su experiencia en San Luis?
Well, for me, the most important thing is to visit the laboratories and talk to the scientists, like Eduardo, but also his students, about the work that they're doing, because that's what I'm most interested in, is learning about the new things that are happening.
Muchísimas gracias. Además, premio honoris causa de esta Universidad Autónoma de San Luis Potosí. Doctor, quiero empezar con las preguntas. ¿Es usted un hombre laureado en la ciencia, pero también es un hombre de fe?
Yes, faith is important for me. I don't think I'm an important person in faith.
Okay. ¿Usted se explica a la fe o a la religión, a Dios, a través de la ciencia o la ciencia a través de sus creencias?
No. So let me explain that.
Sí, please.
I believe that science and faith address different kinds of questions. Science addresses questions about our physical universe, and faith addresses spiritual questions. Questions about our relationship to God, questions about what God expects of us.
Como científico, en el método científico, usted necesita pruebas empíricas, comprobaciones para lo que hace en el campo de la ciencia. ¿Cómo hace para creer sin tener una sola prueba de Dios?
In the case of faith, you mean, how to have evidence. Well, I often think of the passage of Scripture in the 11th chapter of Hebrews. In English, the way it reads, at least in some translations, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. I wish I could write like that.
Sí, sería maravilloso.
But the author is emphasizing that, on the one hand, faith is based on a different kind of evidence than, the author doesn't speak of science, but a different sort of evidence than more physical, temporal things, but still emphasizing that there is indeed evidence. So in science, evidence is the things we see in the laboratory, or the things we observe, for example, through telescope, whereas for spiritual matters, the evidence is more about things we feel in our heart, things we observe about the way people behave to one another.
La ciencia nos aleja de cada vez hay más tecnología, más ciencia, más conocimientos. Estos conocimientos nos han hecho una humanidad más como esa humanidad que dice la religión o la fe, o nos ha hecho más alejados de uno y del otro, del prójimo.
Well, I'm not sure that it makes that big a difference. I think that because of the fact that faith and science or technology deal with different kinds of questions, advances in science, advances in technology, while they're important for our lives and therefore for our spiritual understandings, they're not central to what makes faith important to us. So let me emphasize that a little bit more. Before modern science existed, there were many people who ascribed to God or to gods things that they did not understand about nature. Now that we understand many more things than ancient people did, some people think that we have no more need for God. I think that is a completely wrong way to think about God. I don't believe that God is a way for us to explain things we don't understand. I think rather God is helping us to understand the things that are part of our spiritual lives instead of the things that are part of our scientific lives.
Usted siente la presencia de Dios, comprueba la presencia de Dios a través de toda esta experiencia científica que usted tiene, si se trata esto de conocer la verdad acerca del universo, cómo lo compagina en cuanto a la creación de este universo y su creencia, que ya me ha dicho que es una cuestión de fe individual, con su creencia de que fue Dios.
Híjole,
Well, it depends on what you mean by proof.
depende de prueba.
¿Usted ve en los átomos una existencia de Dios? ¿Ve en las
Do you
estrellas
see-
la existencia de Dios?
Okay, so I want to be very careful how I answer that. When I look at physics in particular, I see that very simple and very beautiful equations can describe a lot of what we understand about physics. It's hard to see why that should be true if there were not some intelligence behind it. But at the same time, I want to emphasize that I do not see the beauty of physics as being a proof of the existence of God.
Okay.
I believe in God because of faith, not because of the beauty of physics. But I think the beauty of physics is consistent with the idea of God.
Esta energía que existe en el universo, esta energía vibracional y todas estas teorías que existen, llevándolas a lo que estamos platicando, ¿cree que esa energía universal sea el amor, sea ese poder superior que algunos llamamos Dios?
No.
No. Why not?
As the Bible tells us, God is spirit. God is not, in my way of thinking, God is not identified with the physical world. God is the basis of the spiritual world and the creator of the physical world. The first chapter of Genesis tells us a very important lesson. It tells us that all of these things that we see in the natural world are the creation of God. They are not God.
La Biblia también dice que fue creado en 7 días y la ciencia comprueba que no fue así.
The Bible is telling us the spiritual message. If we start to ask the Bible about things that are separate from spiritual questions, we're going to get nonsense because that's not what the Bible is about. So the
Dos
idea
lenguajes
of,
distintos.
well, but let's continue with the idea of creation in 6 days. On the
6
seventh
days,
day.
7 days he rests. Yeah.
It's poetry. It's metaphor. It's powerful because it's poetry. Poetry is more powerful than prose, and those first verses of Genesis are really powerful poetry. We don't expect poetry to be literally true. In fact, one of my favorite ideas, someone asked, "Is the Bible literally true?" And the answer is, "Oh no, it's far more true than that."
Mucho más, ¿verdad? Okay.
Ya tenemos que
Sí.
una última pregunta.
Doctor, simplemente agradecerle que nos haya respondido, que haya estado con nosotros, que nos haya dado este tiempo y finalmente decirle en qué momento está trabajando en su cuestión de fe en este momento y en cuestión de ciencia, en qué está trabajando.
Well, on the science side, I'm trying to understand the ways in which we can apply quantum mechanics to interesting systems that we observe in the laboratory, how we can make better measurements using a more sophisticated application of quantum mechanics, how we can understand materials better by looking at simple systems like atomic systems.
Okay. En cuestión de fe.
Trying to understand how to apply the teachings of the Bible, the teachings of Jesus, the teachings of the great thinkers of history about religion to the complicated situation that we face today in the world.
El peor que tenemos, ¿cuál es para usted el peor problema que tenemos hoy en día?
Well, that's hard to say. Climate change seems to me to be an existential problem. And it seems to me that it represents a failure of the responsibility that we were given, that was explained in Genesis, to be stewards of the earth.
Gracias, doctor. Muy
Thank
buena
you very
tarde. Gracias a
You're
todos
welcome.
ustedes por seguirnos. Soy Jorge Saldaña. Hasta la próxima.